Wow, man, freaked out.
Freak out, freak out. Yes, I'm one of the Fracassi freaks who missed Fracassi Fest. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I do truly appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you will, and give me a thumbs up. My son, he's 11. He told me not to forget to say that. I never ever say that. So I'm saying it just to satisfy him. Anyway, today I come to you with fear and trembling. Very nervous. I read a book. Go figure. I read a book by one of my very favorite authors, walking God's green earth, named Philip Fracassi. And he's also one cool dude.
Psychiatrist, and she said I was OCD, one cool dude.
Anyway, I read a book called Sarafina from Earthling Publications, and I got an ARC in advance reading copy so I could read the book early. This is available for pre-order from Earthling Publications for, I think, $95, something like that, on their website, limited edition. 750 copies, I think, and there are still some copies available of Sarafina by Philip Fracassi. But I've read the book. This is now the fourth Philip Fracassi novel that I've read. I read Gothic, Boys in the Valley, and A Child Alone with Strangers. Not in that order, but I read those three books. I loved them all. Boys in the Valley and A Child Alone with Strangers are two of my favorite books of all time. Gothic was also very, very good. One of them's got to be your least favorite, no matter how it works out. But I come to you having read this book, and this book was maybe the most nervous I've ever been, because it'll probably happen someday. Every author is going to write a book that you don't like. And I read this book being afraid, could this be the one? It wasn't. It ain't the one. Philip Fracassi jammed it up big time. He wrote a book that boggled the mind for me. And it's really hard to say. I don't know. It's hard to rank it in terms of, do I like it better than Boys in the Valley and A Child Alone with Strangers, which I really can't pick one I like better out of the two. I'd say this is different. It's adjacent. So it's adjacent to those. Different, very different. But I loved this book, and I loved it for a lot of reasons. For one, this book twisted me up pretty much. Twisted me up quite a bit. But one of the things I figured out about Fracassi is all the way until the very last page, I never really know what's going to happen next. Most authors, most books, you get a pretty good feeling for how things are going to go. And you just want to know at the end, will they or won't they, sort of a thing. With Fracassi, I feel like, especially with this book, I never know what's coming. Not 2/3 of the way through the book, not 3/4 of the way through the book, not 9/10 of the way through the book. I still never know what's coming all the way to the end. Read at the very last page. But, so I loved it. Fabulous. From the very first paragraph, Philip Fracassi is an author that catches my attention and draws me in. And the books I've read, each one has been so much different than the others. They're not the same in any way. Gothic, Child Alone with Strangers, Boys in the Valley, and now Sarafina. It's vastly different, every single one. But the common thread is Philip Fracassi. So, about the plot, I can't tell you a whole lot about this book without spoiling it. But look at the cover and think what you will about what it looks like. So some common themes that I've noticed with Fracassi. He tends to like to have houses in the woods. And this book is no exception. He tends to like to have some religious elements in the book. Although it's not like The Exorcist, one of my favorite books out there by William Peter Blatty, where the priests pray hard enough and make a heroic sacrifice and the day is saved. Not in the traditional sense, but Fracassi tends to put some religious elements in these books, weaved in and out. Not pushing any religion, but that's another common theme. I kind of wonder how that works. Anyway, but a little bit about the plot. We are in the Civil War, and you've got three brothers that are in the battle for their lives. They're in what they call the Battle of Shiloh, and they're fighting for the Confederacy. They're from the South. They're from Natchez, I think that's what you call it, Natchez, Mississippi. And their father's a proud Southerner, and they're fighting for the Confederacy. And they're in this battle, and the tide has turned badly against them, against their troop, and things are bad. And the brothers decide to desert, to go home. They can't stand the shelling anymore. They're going home. The brothers are very different. All three are very different. You have Mason, who's a big brute. You have Archie, who's not quite so big, but he is meaner than a snake, sneaky as a cat, and belligerent when he speaks. Charlie Daniels. That's the book didn't say that. Was Charlie Daniels. Anyway, and then the main character, whose perspective this book is written in for the majority of the book, is Ethan, and he's the runt, the young one, the skinny one, the weak one, the soft one. And they decide to desert and to head back home. Well, as they're heading back home, they're also being chased. They're being chased by the Home Guard, which is essentially the folks that are trying to capture up the deserting soldiers and force them to go back to the front and fight. And there was a lot of that apparently going on during this war. Go figure. People fighting on their own home against their neighbors. They want to go back home. Anyway, the Home Guard, they're being chased by them at every turn. Archie, one of them is wounded. And they stumble, there's a lot of stuff in there, but they stumble upon this river, and beyond this river, they find fruit and food. And beyond this food, they find a home, and they find a lady named Sarafina and a boy named Titus. And Sarafina's a beautiful lady, and they are all infatuated with her. And when they're in this home, things go very, very different. So it goes from a story about these deserters in the Civil War trying to make their way home, gun battles, shootouts, crossing dangerous areas, trying to survive in the wilderness, stuff like that, running into natives. And then it goes into something very different. This is a horror story. So it starts off as a sort of a historical fiction story, but in the heart, this is a horror story. And I say, look at the cover, look at Miss Sarafina, and you'll maybe put two and two together. I'm not going to tell you anything more about the plot. Again, some of the themes in the story. We've all got things to be ashamed of. We've all got evil in us, even the best of us. The best of us and the rest of us. We've all got evil in us. And to what degree do we act on the evil? What things have we done that we don't talk about? Some of those themes are in there. But I don't want to tell anything more about the plot. Most of the story is in the first person perspective. It will switch at times from Ethan to his twin sister Ellie, who stayed home with her dad. It'll switch. At first, it's very briefly, switches to Ellie's perspective. And then it'll switch back to Ethan. And it also switch a little bit in time, from current time to before the war. And so you have a story of what was going on in the home before the war. And then eventually those worlds collide. What was going on at home meets with what's currently happening. But at first, the shift in perspective was a slight confusion for me. And that's probably designed to be that way. What's going on here? It'll keep you a little bit disoriented, a little bit unsure. But I could tell I was going to find out what's going on. And I did. And it worked very, very well. And this is a twist, and then a twist, and a twist. Lots of twists. Like I said, I never really knew how things were going to go until I closed the book. It was that to the wire on how things worked out. You feel like, okay, this is how it's going to go. And then wait, not quite. But Philip is a great storyteller. And that's what I like about him. Not only is he a great guy, but he's a great storyteller. When I read Philip Fracassi, I feel like I'm reading a fan of the horror genre, a fan of literature in general. I feel like I'm reading not only a guy who had read every Stephen King book out there, who had read every Ray Bradbury book out there, but a guy who also probably studied it a little bit, thought about it, tried to unwind or unravel what made that stuff great. I don't know. He never told me that, but that's the impression I get. And then when he writes, you kind of get that impression that this guy's just not out there trying to write a Stephen King story. That this guy has developed an understanding of what makes a story good. And so when he comes up with a story, he also tries to write it in a way that it's going to come off as something that he would probably want to read. And I think that's why I say one of my very favorite authors out there. I can pick up, this is my fourth one now, every single one that I've read. From the moment I started reading, I was in. There's authors that I love that take me a little bit of time to work myself into the groove of their books. Some great books that I love that take me time to work myself into the groove. With the Fracassis that I've read, these 4 main novels, I'm in. It's like, immediately put on the helmet and I'm into the Matrix or whatever that thing was where he said I'm in. Anyway, I jump right in. I'm already at home. I don't know a thing about these characters, but I'm already there. And that's authors that I've loved have been that way. And that's what I dig about Philip Fracassi. So Sarafina, it starts off historical fiction, Civil War era. That might, to some people, they might read that and they don't want to go there. They don't dig historical fiction, or they don't care about the Civil War era or the way they lived or anything like that. But that's just a setting for a horror story. And it's a great one. Fabulous, a fine story, great story. Strong recommendation for Sarafina. I feel like you gotta read it. And the way this book is going to be published is through Earthling Publications in a limited edition hardcover. And then it's got to be at some point, there's going to be some sort of a trade version. Trade softcover probably will come out. And if that's more your speed as far as the dough, I'm sure you'll have a great shot at that. You know, trade softcover prices. But I recommend, as soon as you get the chance, read Sarafina. If it's your first Philip Fracassi, get prepared to like it enough to go read more, because I'm pretty sure you will. And I could tell you a whole lot more about this book. I just love it. I love it a lot. But if you're interested in going out there and buying the Earthling Publications limited edition version of this book, there are some copies available, like I told you, and it'll be signed and numbered. But there's also some pretty amazing artwork in this book, and I did an unboxing video of this arc already, and I just wanted to show you, might as well, since we're here, got the book out and all that kind of stuff, show you some of the illustrations in here from Chris Nurse. It is an illustrated limited edition, and this arc has some of the illustrations in there. Now, some of the stuff may give some spoilers, which I didn't do any spoilers in my review. But if you're worried about a picture perhaps giving something away, I don't think it really does. There's no spoilers there. But if you're worried about that, maybe you should pause, fast forward. This one kind of tells something. If you're worried about a spoiler, cover your eyes, darling. But the illustration there, you don't know what it's about, but it gives a hint of where we're going. Just wanted to show you some of the illustrations that'll be included there. And I can think of no more lies to tell. So thank you for your time. I do truly appreciate it. C'est la vie, baby. Doo-doo.